Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Zero to Empire podcast. On this episode, I have Cliff Latham, and he's actually a mindfulness coach, and he's actually going to be talking about his story and everything that inspired him to get to where he is today. And thank you for being on the podcast, Cliff. And I'm excited to do this episode with you, and we'll see. I can't wait to hear about your backstory. And my first question to you is, what actually sparked your interest in mindfulness and inner work?
Afternoon, Sam. Thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be on with you and your audience here on Zero to Empire. My initial curiosity was ignited by a combination of, I think, unusual experiences in my youth that hinted at a deeper or mystical or whimsical reality. And so, um, I recall, for example, a dream of an enormous wave building silently and slowly, which became symbolic for me and became a profound sort of reference. Also experienced, I think, some deeper unspoken connections with animals and the natural world that felt innate. Being inexplicably drawn to, I think, the beauty and symbolism of things like geometry, the yin yang symbol comes to mind. And then beyond these, I think, inclinations was the addition of consistent external feedback from a wide range of people who often commented on like my calm, soothing presence or um, other aspects that I wasn't necessarily aware of or focused on cultivating. But even beyond this, I think the real answer is just the stark reality of having to face my own loneliness, my own pain and suffering in my life. Those were powerful catalysts that pointed me to grapple with more fundamental questions like what is abandonment, what are these feelings of rejection or neglect or violence, hatred, why do these things exist? And so but through pursuit of these underlying experiences, I drew closer and closer to I think what we'll touch on later, honoring the call. But, looking back, I recognize I've been given certain spiritual sensitivities. And so through that driving force of, on being on that quest for survival and safety and having exercised that inner strength, um, it was really a striving for a deeper connection with what I perceive as the highest power. So devotion to establishing a loving union with that power has been a constant throughout the journey. And I think it's also important for me to say early on that I don't claim any special title or expertise. I know we have mindfulness coach here, but I'm simply doing my best to learn from the wisdom of those that have come before and really tune into their consistent message, which has been to love the highest power, to love myself as a reflection of that power, and to extend the same love to every other being. And so, also emphasizing that true greatness lies in service. So my interest in mindfulness and inner work was truly sparked by a combination of those early mystical inklings and a deep personal kind of need to understand and navigate through the lens of love and connection.
That's solid, and I'm glad that are here today telling us about all this. And so, before we actually talked about how meditation and kriya yoga, I'm not trying to pronounce
Kriya.
that, to be honest with you, kriya,
Yeah.
how did those practices actually enter your life?
Yeah, I actually love this question because, again, as I alluded to in a very real sense, the pain that I was feeling, pain and suffering was the initial guide that led me to the door of meditation. And I, I think as I kind of merge into this community a lot more, it's pretty synonymous. It's a common driver to seek inwardly. And the weight of that suffering coupled with just this natural drive and insatiable thirst for understanding propelled me to seek out knowledge. And it was during this period that I encountered, profound books like Autobiography of a Yogi, which I highly recommend, and the insightful teachings of figures like Eckhart Tolle. So these resources begin to offer a glimpse into the transformative potential of stillness and clarity. And then I truly believe, aside from any effort on my part, that it was an act of grace and divine alignment that brought these powerful methods and techniques of stilling the mind, gaining clarity into my life at precisely the right time. Um, I also mentioned early experiences shaping my path. One particular childhood vision remains vivid to this day. Wasn't a typical memory, but more like a waking dream or a daydream where I saw myself sitting silently in a meditative posture within a forested area. And as a kid growing up in the suburbs in San Antonio, that image really had very little context in my everyday life, yet it stayed with me. And then you fast forward 30 years and life had presented some challenges. I was navigating the complexities of a divorce, the demands of a career in software sales. My mental and physical well-being were clearly signaling the need for attention. And and I want to relate to an experience that one day that kind of amidst all the chaos, I paused before entering a store and I took a deep sigh. And as I reached the bottom of that sigh, there was an image that flashed into my mind's eye of a person sitting cross-legged in a meditative posture with vibrant wheels of light ascending and descending their spine. And it was an image that resonated with me deeply, even though I wasn't familiar with it. And it was just impossible to ignore. So, that combination of just suffering, natural curiosity and drive and inclination, but also this divine intervention served as the catalyst, ultimately inspiring me to delve into my inner world and take it seriously. And that exploration led me to the doorstep of, again, life-changing practices that I hold dear, such as meditation, kriya, breathwork, practices that have been just integral to my journey.
That's solid. I'm glad to hear it. And what actually clicked with coaching that made you want to officially pursue this all?
Um, yeah, I believe there are likely, two or three significant factors again that converge, leading to this clear realization of my truth and my desire to share it with the world through coaching. Firstly, I perceive a palpable sense of agitation in the world around us. These are undeniably, turbulent times and marked by uncertainty. I think in people are yearning for stability and peace. Nations are yearning for that, and individually as well. But this observation fueled a desire to contribute one positively to the world and the collective well-being. I think second, my own sense of, I think most people or a lot of people are familiar with the term ikigai. It's a Japanese term that sort of that sweet spot of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can sort of be rewarded or compensated for offering. And where all those things intersect, for me, it strongly revolves around fostering inner calmness, facilitating self-discovery, nurturing a natural connection to the spiritual dimension of life. These are areas where I feel both passionate, but also, naturally inclined. And I think lastly, it all crystallized when I asked myself, a simple yet profound question, which is what is the easiest, most effective and enjoyable way for me to serve, my fellow beings? And that question prompted me to have an honest reflection on my strength and what truly brings me joy in connecting with others. So, I can't help but bring it to a sports analogy. Being a lifelong Spurs fan, I've had the privilege of witnessing and deeply admiring the dynamic between Tim Duncan, who was a Hall of Fame basketball player, and Greg Popovich, who, to me, their enduring success, as I observed over the years, was built upon a strong foundation of this mutual trust and unwavering belief in one another. And this model of guidance and collaboration and support and belief, in another person's potential resonated deeply with me growing up, and really stirred my own desire to serve in a similar capacity. And it highlighted the power, I think, of seeing someone's greatness and helping them realize it for themselves. Um, this this realization, combined with my observations of the world's needs, my own inherent inclinations, made the path of coaching feel like the natural and authentic way for me to contribute meaningfully.
That's awesome. And when it comes to who you like to have as your ideal client, who are they?
Mm. This question I think is a bit of a paradoxical question to answer because I never want to alienate anyone. I think again we all have a common denominator as human beings, and we follow this archetypal sort of journey. So I think my ideal client is someone I deeply resonate with and feel uniquely equipped to support. I wouldn't want to disqualify anyone, But generally, this tends to be the high performer, right? Individuals who have achieved a certain level of success, I think, in the world, in their careers, in society, in their craft, um, whatever that definition of success is. But they sense a deeper potential within them to ready to be unlocked or waiting to be unlocked, and they often feel a pull to expand their consciousness beyond their current understanding and tap into, even more greatness, right? So it's really a timing deal versus any sort of quality or trait. I think people tend to come to a time and a place where um, they're like, man, I wish there was a mindfulness coach or a Cliff out there, right? And if they knew what that meant, it would just click, right? And that's how I look at it, is who I would have wanted someone like me at certain points along the journey, and it just would have been so helpful had I been aware. And resources have evolved since over the last 15, 20 years, so I'm glad to make myself available. But I particularly enjoy and appreciate working with people who are genuinely curious about the intricate correlation between deepening inner calmness and then how that reflects into outward clarity. So curiosity, they're individuals who possess a sincere desire to truly, know and be at peace with themselves at a fundamental level. And then they're also willing to be experimental, which I think is probably the most key, because in the approach to sort of your inner self, being open to explore different practices and perspectives allows you to have the experience, which is crucial. It's firsthand experience, right? I can't have the experience for you of this sort of breakthrough or this awakening to yourself. And so that openness to experiment is just absolutely, you have to be ready for that, right? And only what you're ready to step into and ready to step away from. Um, and that will create lasting success, and that comes from inner alignment. So people, when you're not afraid to look within and are ready to do the work required for meaningful transformation, I believe that our paths will cross, or you'll be ready to reach out.
That's solid, and I'm glad to hear it. And can you actually tell us a client story that impacted you?
Yeah. So while I respect that, I want to respect everyone's privacy, and I won't share any specific details, but I can speak to one particular story, and then also some recurring themes that I think have deeply impacted me. But there was a gentleman, while I was on a retreat for a few months, actually to go within the meditative retreat at a yoga ashram, performing service and the like. I met a young man in his mid 20s, working as an engineer in software, and had a background where traditionally his family followed the Vedic tradition. So very ritualistic, very structured, but also a very elaborate and beautiful heritage for those who know the history of India. And he gravitated toward me. Actually, I had never met him. And so I invited him to go on a walk. It was a 200-acre property, very conducive to this type of conversation. And it was informal, spontaneous. We went on a walk, and it was about an hour long, and I hardly said a word, and he just spilled his guts, and he just needed someone to listen. And on one hand, I wanted to label what he was telling me, because it sounded a lot like a sob story or a complaint. And I think a lot of us, when we don't feel safe, we end up judging that, oh man, this, I don't have anywhere to put this weight, right? I don't want to complain. I don't want to be self-loathing, but it's also something I need to get out, right? And he needed that. And so I was able to provide a space for him to kind of release some of these things, or at least be heard. And a few weeks later, there was a program at this property and a retreat where there was a talent show to conclude the ceremonies, if you will. And he volunteered and went up to um, deliver a a chant, or an invocation of the rituals that he had learned as a child, which really had scarred him. I think he wasn't really sure in our conversations why he was put through such rigor to memorize all these chants and be so structured throughout his childhood. Is really difficult for him to comprehend when the world is such a big place. And it was so beautiful to see him just in a matter of weeks really transform himself in terms of his confidence and embracing his heritage and his pride and just glowing up in front of people to allow himself to be seen and really lean into these really 30 minutes of continuous chanting and memorization. It was just so beautiful. He captivated a room of 100 people. And I was so proud of him because to me, the change in him was palpable. The belief in him had surfaced and the belief in himself was visible. And that is, one example of, I think, sort of a miraculous transformation that is so subtle, just something as simple as a walk where I don't say anything and he feels heard, to now being able to reframe his childhood and things that were very difficult for him into really a triumph and something that he shared with the world and really enriched us all. So that's one story. But if I could take a second as well, I think to speak to, I think, recurring themes that that highlights is people genuinely want to connect with someone who's not in competition with their ego. So there's a palpable sense of relief, and openness when a client or friend feels truly seen and heard without the judgment or the subtle pressure of comparison, right? So witnessing someone shed layers of self-doubt and stepping into their authentic power simply because they feel safe and believed in is, for me, incredibly moving and rewarding, and reinforces the core of my coaching philosophy. So in these moments of genuine connection, non-judgmental presence, that true transformation often blossoms, and those experiences again are deeply impactful for me as a coach. It just adds fuel to my fire.
Very important that open communications very impactful as well. And I'm glad you're able to make that impact on him. That's very positive and exciting. And you've actually gone through serious losses in the past year of your own behalf. How did that actually shift your own worldview?
Uh, yeah, and I can't take any credit for the change that takes place in anyone, right? I just try to show up best for any one person in a given moment. But getting to some of the losses and how they've impacted me, um, you know, I think everyone at a time experiences less than ideal circumstances, and so it's up to us to look for that silver lining. But you know, experiencing significant personal losses undeniably brought about a profound shift in my worldview. It's stripped me away from any remaining illusions or sense of permanence or control. So highlighting the precious, fragile nature of life and of relationships. It's deepened my sense of empathy. Compassion is a big theme and ideal. Um, Compassion for the suffering of others, knowing firsthand the raw and disorienting experience of grief, um, but also loss. When you're going through loss, you can feel isolated. Um, it's but it underscores, I think, again, going back to the beginning of our conversation, this interconnectedness of all things, right? This underlying commonality that we all experience. And so it's reinforced the importance of presence, savoring each moment, prioritizing genuine connection over superficial pursuits, which is an art. Um, it's also strengthened my resolve to live authentically with purpose. I think suffering and trials and that adversity tend to tease out our purpose in life. And so, the experiences again instilled a deeper appreciation for the resilience of the human spirit that I see in everyone, capacity for healing. Um, it comes down to love and connection and compassion. Really grounding that here into the physical realm.
I'm sorry that you had to go through all that, but I'm glad that you're making a positive impact on everyone around you and staying positive yourself. And so, how do you actually go about holding space for others while navigating your own growth and pain?
Now we're getting into, I think, the meat of, or the heart of my day to day, right? So holding space is an energetic exercise. It requires a deep commitment to my own personal self-care and inner work. For me, it comes down to rest, relaxation, and rejuvenation, which are foundational and also, I think, a bit counterintuitive when you think about work, right? I think a lot of us correlate work with a lot of exertion, but my work in going inward is again a calmness, achieving a stillness, and a union with that higher power. So, just as a musician needs a well-tuned instrument, I need to ensure that my own inner state is clear and as balanced as possible. So the true work for me often happens in private. So I brought you out to my favorite park here where I come out early and try to beat the rush to meditate out in nature, and create intentional moments of isolation where I can process my own emotions and recharge my energetic reserves. And it's a skill that hasn't developed overnight. And it's been a process of self-discovery. It's taken my entire life to understand and understand how to cultivate. I see myself slowly becoming a craftsman in the art of holding space, but also constantly striving for greater mastery. It's that's definitely the line that I'm on, and it involves a conscious effort to be fully present with the other person, to listen deeply without judgment, and to create a container of safety and trust where they feel seen and heard. So it's very intentional, and it's a delicate balance. There are times when my own pain requires more attention. Um, in those moments, I have to be honest with myself and sometimes with the client. That's crucial. And it's about recognizing my capacity in any given moment and ensuring I can offer genuine presence without depleting myself. So self awareness is key. My own journey through pain and growth actually enhance my ability to empathize and understand the complexities of the human experience, which in turn informs my ability to hold space for others, right? So it's cultivating a sensitivity within myself, taking care of myself first, and then showing up fully for um, someone else authentically and with compassion.
Yes, compassion is definitely very important. And that's a very pretty park behind you, and very jealous of where you're at. And what does honoring the calling mean to you?
Oh man, I don't know if that's a cliche phrase yet, but let me try to provide my own spin on how I've tried to approach. I think this idea, to me, it's about recognizing and responding to a deep, intuitive whisper of life. I think it's really a language that life speaks to each of us individually. It's unique, but it's also from a primordial origin, which makes it kind of mystical. It makes it kind of scary, and but it's constant. We all know that it's a constant call or constant communication with us, and it's not always loud or dramatic, right? It's often like a subtle pull or an inner knowing, a persistent curiosity, perhaps, or like for me, a series of synchronicities that can point me or you in a particular direction. So, honoring this call, quote unquote, right, means having the courage to listen to the inner nudges and allow ourselves to be led away from familiar paths of societal expectations. I think it involves centering our lives around the message that we're getting, that resonates most deeply with our hearts and souls. So aligning our actions and our values with pursuing what truly brings us alive, what makes us feel alive, brings that enthusiasm to life. And I think ultimately honoring that the call is about living a life, again, I'll use that word, that feels authentic and purposeful, a life that contributes to something larger than ourselves, and it feels deeply meaningful. So saying yes to our unique expression of ourselves and our pattern in life, and embodying that.
That's great. I actually agree with you 100%. And what part of the coaching journey do you actually love the most?
Uh, I think there are several aspects. Right now, and this answer may change, but right now it's, I think knowing and having compassion for myself, right? Because again, I think I have to, my locus of control, right, starts with my own journey and my own work. And it's so enjoyable that I want to share it with others. So every day after I've done my work, it's just natural to look for somebody to share it with and to create opportunities for sharing what I've discovered. So I truly believe that my ability to effectively support others is, directly proportional to my own self-awareness and self-acceptance. The dedicated time for solitude, reflection, honest self-assessment, that's my number one job and the key to my success. So I've got to continually cultivate that. But I think closely related to the profound joy I experience through the self work is also witnessing, again, the transformative effect that belief has on the human heart, mind, and soul. But belief is something that I yearned for as a child, and I think we all, to some extent, know how special that feels when we feel truly supported to our core. So to see a client begin to believe in themselves, often for the first time in a long time, is truly remarkable, to me. My role in many ways is to, make somebody feel heard on a level they may have never experienced before. And then to see that belief as a helping hand that reaches out from, the light, right, and guides someone out of the darkness of their own perceived limitations. And again, can't take credit for that, but I also recognize that, I'm oftentimes in this very sacred, solemn position of doing so, offering that helping hand. And beyond the individual transformations, I think I deeply appreciate just the poetry of it all. I find beauty in spotting the patterns in life that emerge in our experience, the universal threads that connect us, and despite our individual differences. Um, it's just fascinating to observe how even things like individuality and isolation are actually, um, shared traits among us. They're not bad things. And much like I think of like the planets, right? Celestial bodies, how distinct and spaced out they are, but they're all part of a larger cosmic system, So there's an intricate dance going on, both on the macro and the micro, and the human psyche and the potential for growth and healing are just endlessly captivating to me.
Yeah, that's very cool and very insightful. And where can those actually interested in having you as a coach find you or reach out to you by?
So right now, you can find me on LinkedIn very easily, Cliff Latham. Connect with me, follow me, message me. I'm there both on my personal profile as well as Gateway Yoga. You can reach out to me directly via email, latham.cliff@gmail.com. And then I'll provide Sam with a link to my website. We're very basic at the moment, but you can read more about me and schedule with me through LinkedIn, my email, or my website.
That's perfect. So thank you so much, Cliff, for being on the podcast.
It's my
And thank
pleasure.
you for everyone that's listening in or watching in. And I'll see everyone on the next episode of Zero to Empire.
Thank you, Sam.